Oli here, and this is my review of The Invasion of Time, the sixth and final story of the 15th season of classic Doctor Who, starring Tom Baker as the fourth Doctor. The Invasion of Time is a 97 story overall, it's 6 parts long, and is written by Anthony Head, Anthony Reid, and Graham Williams under the pseudonym of David Agnew. So, the plot of The Invasion of Time is as follows. The Doctor is behaving very oddly. After signing a treaty with enemy aliens, he returns to his home planet Gallifrey and demands the presidency of the High Council of the Time Lords. His first act of all is to banish Lila to the wastelands on pain of death. His second is to sabotage the planet's defense barriers, enabling a full-scale invasion. Why has the Doctor joined forces with the militaristic Vardans? Is he out for revenge against the Time Lords, or does he have a hidden agenda? But his allies are also hiding a dark secret. For them, a familiar enemy is waiting for the right moment to attack. So that is the plot of The Invasion of Time. In my opinion, The Invasion of Time is a mess. Not as messy as Underworld or Undershite, but but The Invasion of Time is an enjoyable yet cartoonish mess. The production was good, although iffy at parts. The Gallifrey Citadel looks really good, and I like the president's office, like the wall people or whatever it was of the president's office. I like the gears and everything that was there. It looked really creative. I think it's even on the DVD cover itself. Well, as you can see, like in this part here, that was actually really cool. The Gallifreyan wastelands were decent. I like that they used the quarry to represent Gallifrey, and I kind of like the orange filter that closely matched the initial descriptions of Gallifrey outside the citadel, especially with the grade of the orange sky at night minus the silver trees. The TARDIS sets looked, other than the console room, looked very. It wasn't very good. I mean, it looked like they found like a disused building and they started like running around it. And they used the spare arts and crafts room where the doctor found the DMAT gun. It was just, I didn't. It just, I mean that part of the story they're just running around the TARDIS isn't that particularly good, and especially it's just I'll get into it a bit later. I just didn't really like the part, and obviously the room itself. It didn't look very. I don't know. It just. I know. I think it's just the budgetary issue. I just think a lot more could have been done to at least make it look better. The script was decent, and the direction by Gerald Blake was okay. I guess it was good, but not as good as other stories. The plot was okay-ish. I guess. I mean, I must admit, it was all over the place, and it was painfully obvious. And I think the Invasion of Time was like some sort of sequel to the Deadly Assassin, in which the Doctor became the Lord President after trying to run for the position of Deadly Assassin whilst he was trying to evade execution for being accused of assassinating the president. I did like the twist of the Centaurans being the true villains of the story. It was done very well, and I bet if you was watching this for the first time in 1978, it was a very big plot twist to say the least. But I must admit, the Centaurans were criminally mishandled in the last two parts of the story. The pacing wasn't great, and part of the story dragged, and not to mention there was a lot of noticeable filler in the story, such as Leland Roden's brief banishment and Leela running around Gallifrey to evade capture before meeting Roden. I did like how this story was the first to properly explore the TARDIS interior, but the execution of that plot point was a bit of a letdown, to be honest. In terms of memorable moments, there were quite a few. Like I really like the part 4 cliffhanger. And this is when the Doctor and everyone else were trying to we're celebrating defeating the Vardans, but all of a sudden the Centaurans just randomly show up. But also like the start of the story when the Doctor arrived in Gallifrey to claim his legal right to be president, and Bruce was like, "What?" I actually found that scene quite funny. To the performances, they were alright, I must say. Tom Baker was great in the story, and there's a small change to the Doctor's character. He's behaving rather serious, although I believe he was pretending to work for the Vardans, but there were a few times he actually shouted at some characters, and that was a very good twist to the Fourth Doctor's character. And I think Tom Baker did a good job showing how he was pretending to be working for the Vardans. And it was good at the start of the story. Harry pretty much caught on to the fact there was something very wrong with the Doctor, but after that Vardan storyline was completed, I mean, the Doctor just pretty much reverts back to his usual goofy self, and he does have some very funny lines as well. And I liked the part when the Centaurans showed up and they were describing themselves, or when the Centaurans said they were a part of the Centauran Special Space Service, and the Doctor was like, the SSSS. Isn't that kind of illustration a bit too far? Louise Jameson was good in this story, even though her departure was very shit, and I'll get onto it a bit later. Lily didn't really have a special purpose to do in this story other than worry about the Doctor in part one. And in part two, she pretty much was running away from the guards and Time Lords, and then meets Rhoda. And then part three, for her and Rhoda escape from the Citadel, where they meet the Outsiders, a group of former Time Lords, I think they were, and then Leela's trying to persuade them to go to the Citadel to try and save the Doctor. Parts 5 and 6, more running, and then part 6, obviously, that's when she decides to stay behind on Gallifrey because she fell in love with Android, a character she barely interacted with, and decided she pretty much she'd fallen in love with him. Kanan was very good in this story. He does play more of a vital role in this story more than Leela. He destroys the transduction barriers to allow the Vardans into Gallifrey, and he later helped defeat the Vardans as well by sending them back to their home planet. So I think he decides to stay behind the Gallifrey to look after Leela, and I think John Leeson did a great job in this story as well. So on to the noticeable side cast. We had Barusa returning from the Deadly Assassin, but he's played by a different actor, however. He tries to help the Doctor, but he was unsure of what his intentions were, but he pretty much sided with the Doctor in stopping the Sontarans. Andred, the commander of the Chancery Guard, he tried to kill the Doctor, but later assisted into helping him defeat the Vardans and the Sontarans when he realized the Doctor's true intentions, and he randomly fell in love with Leela, because in fact the only part-time they spoke during the whole story is in part 1 when Leela was trying to get Andrea to stop calling her madam. Rhoda, and she, a young Time Lord fresh from the Time Lord Academy, and she was assigned to monitor duty. She aided Leela when they left the Citadel, and she later helped the Doctor to defeat the Sontarans. Castellan Kellner, he aided the Doctor in removing the Time Lord that could cause trouble in the Doctor's new regime, but it later turned out he was working for the Vardans and the Sontarans. Gomer, the Surgeon General of the High Council, he argued that the Doctor's presidency wasn't good, when he was rejected by the Matrix, but he later helped Leela and the Outsiders to help the Doctor. And we have Nesbin, the leader of the Outsiders, and a group of former Time Lords, and he helped Leela to form an attack against the Sontarans. They were good, to say the least, so they were a fair bunch, but they're all very good characters, to say the least. So, on to the villains. We have the Vardans, humanoids with the ability to travel through broadcast wavelengths. That includes thought. They even appear outside the humanoid from some form of electric field, hence the dodgy tinfoil special effect. And they wanted the Doctor to help take over Gallifrey, but they were defeated when K9 identified their planet of origin and placed it in the time loop. To be honest, I thought the Vardans weren't too impressive, to be honest. I thought they were just very generic and just boring basic villains. They didn't really have anything threatening to them. They're just, yeah, and obviously the true villains are Sontarans with their Commander Store. Once Gallifrey had their force fields down, the Sontarans immediately invaded Gallifrey by using the Vardans to gain access, and I thought that was a very ballsy move by the Sontarans. And then later they were involved in some sort of goose chase around the TARDIS. So the Sontarans, as I mentioned earlier, they weren't written very well. And they all died rather quickly. I mean, one was killed by Leela, one was killed by one of the Outsiders, and one of the Sontarans killed him in return. Storr was killed. I think one of the Sontarans was killed by the Doctor in the TARDIS, and Storr was killed with the D-Mat gun by the Doctor, and I thought the D-Mat gun was just a Durac Machina in my opinion. As much as I like the Sontarans being in this story and how they chose to being the true villains, I just thought it was a very random addition for them to be in the story. So the other thoughts I have with this story is that as it was the writing, it was all over the place and it seemed very directionless. Even though it was good at some parts, it was just most of the time it just felt very directionless. The Vardans practically did nothing but talk until their defeat, and then the Sontarans, yes, they were a major threat, but then nothing really came from them other than the easy victory for the Doctor. So, on to Leela and K9's exit, which I actually hate, and this is a fault I have of the story as well. So, as I said before, Leela decides to stay behind on Gallifrey because she's fallen in love with Android, and that plot point just really came out of nowhere, and I guess the writers pretty much had that point written in the story, because if because I wanted Louis Jameson to stay on for season 16, but nothing really came out of that, so they just pretty much just randomly inserted it in for some reason. And Kanan decided to stay behind so he can look after Leela because. And it's a shame that Louise Jameson got a very bad exit in the story. She even said it herself, she didn't really like it because I think she decided to leave and drink Image of the Fendel, and Graham Williams was actually trying to convince her to stay on board the TARDIS. And I think Leela even wanted an exit where she'll get killed by the Centaurans to try and save the Doctor, but then Graham Williams thought that was too dark for Doctor Who, so I just don't know why. I mean, if they wanted her to stay behind on Gallifrey, she could at least let the outsiders, not just randomly fall in love with some guy you just met in the first part. And it was just, I don't even know if it was even love. Even I think it was just some kind of lust was involved, because why would you stay behind on Gallifrey to just with this guy you just barely even spoken to? It's just, it doesn't really make any sense to me. Even the Doctor's attitude towards her ex was just appalling, because Leela tells the Doctor she wants to stay behind on Gallifrey, and Kanan says to leave her zone, and the Doctor's like, okay, bye. And then before the Doctor heads into the TARDIS, Leela was like, I shall miss you. And then the Doctor just pretty much just goes back inside the TARDIS, and when he closes the door, he's just like, I'll miss you too, Savage. It's as if he didn't really care. I mean, I really don't know. And then later, the Doctor just brings out the second K9 model, which will be in the Key to Time and in the 2 seasons after that. So to conclude, the Invasion of Time, how it got completed is beyond me. Messy writing, but it does still have some good parts, and it is quite enjoyable as well. So I give this story a 7 out of 10, and that's me being generous. So that's it for my reviews for season 15. Stay tuned for my ranking for season 15. Thank you for watching. Please let me know what you thought of this review and the Invasion of Time itself. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already. Discord server is in the description box below. Until then, see you later.